Hello and welcome to the June 2026 NovaCVS update. My name is Hrishi, and in this channel, I talk about my journey building NovaCVS. Now, NovaCVS is a tool to help with the licensing and the pre-licensing activities for new nuclear power plants. Now, we are talking about the nuclear energy, but you will see some of the concepts that are being discussed in this channel can be applicable to other energy domains as well, and also in things like decommissioning and so on. Now, one of the main problems in this licensing activities for new nuclear power plants is the amount of documentation that is needed and the amount of time it takes to process it, and consequently the money spent on it. And so basically, we are building NovaCVS to help with some of these. So the idea is not to create new tools and new sort of one more additional workflow, but the way to efficiently manage this with your existing tools. So if you look at the past videos in the channel, I showed you how you can use your existing GIS systems to import some of the data. I've also shown videos about how you do regulatory documentation comparison using the LLM technologies in NovaCVS. And now in this video, I'm going to talk to you about a site comparison. So to help with that, I've created a small diagram. As I said, this is specific to nuclear power plants, but in general, these can be applicable to other domains as well. Now, on the left-hand side, you see here, there is a jurisdiction, there is a site, and there is a technology that is licensed. Now, a lot of the vendors and the SMR developers and so on have this idea where they want to be able to deploy their technology in different sites. And basically, the idea is this kind of a type certification as we have in the aviation industry, but obviously that doesn't exist in the way it does in aviation. Now, when you have to deploy a licensed technology in a different jurisdiction, in a different site, you have to understand the differences in the regulation. And in addition to that, you have to also sort of build the documentation and perhaps have this understanding of local nuances and so on. And so this creates a huge problem as far as the efficiency of the process is concerned. Now, obviously, there are activities going on in this context in various forums, but what I'm going to show you is some tools to help with this. And the core idea for NovaCVS, and particularly the site comparison piece, is not to have this, let's say, start everything from scratch, but to understand the differences in the laws of one site versus the other and focus on those, and then somehow automatically manage the rest of them. So these deltas that you see on your screen are what we're going to focus on. Again, in the context of sites, we are not going to talk about technology at this moment, but these ideas can be replicated for that as well. So this is the sort of the background to what I'm going to talk to you about. So let's just jump in. So this is NovaCVS. If I say get started, you will see here the site comparison piece. In this case, I'm going to have an existing site. For example, let me just refresh it. The current site A. So here you will see, for example, the site, and this is my potential site B, okay? So if you look at it here, that's my current site, and that's the potential site. Now, in this case, if you remember, I had showed you in the past videos about how you import sites from your GIS system. So again, these are not sites that are managed here. These are managed in a different existing system that you have, and we just plug in to that. So in this site, for example, this is a site in the UK, which is under the ONR, let's say, regulatory framework. And then this is a Belgian site, potential under the FONC sort of regulatory regime. Now, in this, you have some, let's say, monitors that are available. So if you look at UK regulations, we have created basically some kind of a regulatory monitor. Here you can see the exact, let's say, reference to that. And then here you have, for example, a similar regulatory monitor for the Belgian, let's say, regulatory sort of system. And these monitors are created after review of these two regulatory documents. And so the idea here is that you have two sites where you want to deploy some kind of a replication, and you have a list of regulatory monitors. And in this case, you can see that I'll talk about how these monitors are developed in a different video. But here, for example, I can then say for an SMR, show me what is the difference between the two sites. Now, in this case, for example, you have the emergency feasibility sort of a monitor, which the IAEA standard is specifying. So although you have two different jurisdictions, UK and Belgium, they both agree on the IAEA standard, or at least they are accepted. And from that, you can say, okay, well, this standard in section 2.3 specifies the emergency distance, and then for site A, it will pass, and then for site B, it maybe you need to change it. And so the idea here is that you are comparing two different jurisdictions with two different regulatory regimes. Obviously, some of them are harmonized, but some of them won't be harmonized. And the idea is that you then reference it with the IAEA documentation. And in the same way, you can have this, for example, a three-way comparison. I can say, for example, what is the role of local authorities? For example, I can just hit that, and what it will do is to give you a regulatory documentation comparison and a slight understanding, a brief understanding of why they are different. Again, if you want to go deeper into this particular aspect, there are videos in the channel about it where we compare regulatory documents. But the idea here is the following. We have two sites in two different jurisdictions with two different, let's say, regulatory monitors. Then we sort of do this delta analysis of what is different between these two sites. And then you go into your, let's say, GIS system to make sure that these monitors are then turning green. And obviously, the goal for all of this is to then submit this in your licensing documentation. So again, the idea is not so much to create a brand new system, but to have these tools integrate with your existing systems and then add this as a documentation attachment or appendices or whatever would be the right way to do it, to have as a part of your regulatory submission. Now, as I said to you, this is very focused on the IAEA and the nuclear standards, but really they can be applied to any kinds of site replication problem that we have. This is sort of what you would call, as in IAEA parlance, a site envelope, a generic site envelope, something like that. But the idea here is to develop these monitors, and in the next videos, I'm going to show you how you develop these list of monitors based on documents, and then do this three-way comparison as far as the role, for example, of local authorities that you can then query. With this, I want to conclude this video. It's a lot to take, but I hope you get an idea of how different sites can be compared. And then what you have to really sort of think about is not so much what they have in common, but just work on the deltas. And then the idea is that you can then have a systematic way of comparing different sites and obviously adding it to the documentation and so on. With that, I conclude my video. Thank you for your time, and I will see you in the next video in the channel, where we will talk about how these compliance monitors are built and some of the features and capabilities of it. Thank you.